Dear people of St. Timothy's, today is our patronal feast. This is the day we celebrate the feast of Saints Timothy and Titus, the young companions of St. Paul. We, of course, emerged from St. Paul's here in Winston-Salem in 1950 as a young companion to the established parish, but we're not quite as young as we used to be. We're in our mid-70s now in terms of the life of our parish, with lots of experiences, lots of wisdom, and lots of holy people who have sanctified our parish and our walls with prayer. But I think it's safe to say there's been perhaps no experience in our history quite like this one that we have endured together, and we're still enduring. And we are very grateful for your tenacity and perseverance and fidelity to our Lord and your commitment to your local parish. The words that Paul has given St. Timothy to give him encouragement and insight as he was tasked with the call to navigate a young Christian community through the vicissitudes of life and faith and division still apply to us today. And if we could read those two letters this week, we would be the better for it. We're finishing up our staff meeting on Tuesday, and this is most of our staff that's online here today. And I've asked them just, if they wanted to maybe reflect a bit about their faith during this pandemic, and also what they're excited about and what gives them energy about the future, especially in this parish at St. Timothy's. And so we have Jamie O'Byrne, who is our director of logistics, and she keeps us organized. Luke Klingstead, who's in charge of youth, and Robert Matthews, our organist, John Rack, who keeps the building together, and Kristen Barnhart, who directs all the wonderful music. Chris Irvin is our parish administrator, and I meet with him on a separate Zoom. So this is most of our staff here. We're kind of in a Brady Bunch arrangement today. And but do any of you have anything just short you want to share about your faith, what you've learned, what has enriched you, challenged you, and how you were excited about our future together at St. Timothy's?
Yeah, I'll go. So pre-pandemic, I didn't realize how important the physical church was to me. And I've come to know how much I miss the act of attending Mass and coming together to pray and sing. I know once I'm able to return, I'll have renewed appreciation for something I took for granted my entire life. I've been inspired by goodness and creativity of people all over the world, but especially by the staff here. The ability of you all to adapt and pivot over and over again, I think is incredible. I mean, even today you're talking about podcasts. I mean, it's just something new every day that you guys are just diving into and mastering. And I'm definitely inspired by it. And as a member of a different church, I can tell you that what happens here on a daily basis is not typical. It is the gold standard. And I'm very proud to be a small part of that every day.
Oh, very kind. I'm not sure we've mastered anything, but we're working on it. We're moving toward perfection.
My thoughts are similar to Jamie's, that the physical space has become so important for me, but I've also noticed that my physical body within the physical space. I've noticed, as you know, Chloe and I have been doing evening prayer together at home during the pandemic, instead of, up at the church with, our church members. And I've noticed that, if I'm sitting on the couch, a lot of the prayers that I have memorized, they're harder to bring to mind again, and I'm having to read them more. And so it was, when I kneel, if I'm able to come up here to do it or something, the prayers start coming back easier. And so I've kind of realized that these habits that were formed in these physical spaces, the context that we have, the altar up at the front, the candles, those things help draw me into a deeper spirit of prayer. And so what I'm looking forward to is taking that knowledge, and in the future, as we start looking ahead to when we can gather again, realizing and not taking for granted how much those physical things bring my body into a state of prayer and kind of let my mind catch up. And what something that's encouraging to me is I think I'm more convinced now than I have been in a long time that the faithfulness of the people of St. Timothy's will, continue. I sit in the back and I live stream the 11 o'clock service, and I know it's colder at 7:30 and 9, but it's still cold at 11. And I see all these people that are faithfully showing up, bundled up. Sometimes they're shivering in the back row. This past Sunday it was exceptionally cold, but there's a faith and a commitment there. And we, like what Jamie said, we can sit here and figure out how to do a podcast and figure out the best ways to live stream. But that only happens because of the people's faithfulness to continue showing up and praying. So I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to carrying the knowledge that we've learned in the past 11, 10 months during this pandemic, and using that to our benefit in the future.
Kind of tag
My
teaming on that.
reflection.
Oh, go ahead, Robert.
Okay. My reflection has something to do with something we already mentioned actually in staff meeting, the word hope. I was trying to think about what to say this morning, and I heard a story on NPR, Remembrance Day, and they interviewed a 90-year-old woman who is a survivor of Auschwitz. Her name is Ruth Cohen, and some of you may have heard this. She lost her mother and 2 adopted siblings in the camp, but she and her sister and her father survived. And one thing that she said really stood out to me. She said, and I wrote this down, so it's a quote. I survived feeling that I was very lucky and that hope helped me survive. I'm still a very hopeful person. And this immediately made me think of Romans 5, where Paul says, we also boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. I'm not trying to compare our current situation with the Holocaust, but I think we do all need to look for signs of hope during these challenging times, and I was really inspired by that.
I think one of the gifts of the pandemic is making everybody slow down and kind of stripping away, like Jamie, what you said, stripping away everything that or a lot of things we've taken for granted. So talking about taking for granted the physical space of the church, but also the people, because, I've been here at the church. Granted, we don't have the nave in how we all remember it, but the chapel's here, and we have the church set up in Drake and the outdoor chapel. And I've spent some time in those places just by myself. So I've had access to that physical space, but to me, without the people there, it's not as, I can have my own personal devotion, but it's the corporate worship that I've really missed. And finally, when we were able to worship on Epiphany outside with, of course, everybody masked and distanced, but that was the first time I really felt like I'd been to church since the pandemic started. And that was such like a boost of, I don't know, vitamin B12 or something. It gave me a lot of energy and hope for when we're able to do that again. And I certainly do hope that people haven't just gotten used to sitting at home for church, but can see the importance of us being together, worshiping together. One other quick thing that has been interesting for me is in future years, I've always been, 6 weeks or 8 weeks or even 12 weeks ahead of the liturgical calendar, because I have to get everything prepared and make sure all the choirs are prepared to lead worship. And so in a way, that's a little bit like liturgical whiplash, because I'm like singing hallelujahs in Lent because we got to get ready and all the back and forth. And this year I've had to just back up and not plan as far ahead because we can't. And I have some plans, an A, B, and C in a way. but at the same time, I've been able to live in the liturgical moment a little more than I have in the past. And that's been a gift for me, for sure.
Thank you. It occurred to me today that the biblical image I think that resonates most with me is Jonah, where I've been asked to do things I don't want to do, and I've resisted them. And then when I have relented and gone along with the program, the outcome is different than I expect. And then I'm just angry. And so I'm looking for a tree to sit under, to pout, and then for that tree to wither and the sun to beat down upon me. And there's a lesson for me to learn. And that's been my own personal spiritual journey on this, that has been chastising, and I'm still dealing with it. But great fruit emerges, just as with Jonah, because you discover more about yourself, and of course more about the Lord. In terms of this church, all the things that you've said, I have to echo completely. I'll also add confirmation for me that the intuition that I have always felt and I've led with in the past 13, almost beginning the 14th year here at St. Timothy's, is that the traditional ancient practices of the church are not only relevant today, but are life-giving. And I think that one thing that I have has been confirmed for me, is that those practices are the very things that keep us in difficult times like this pandemic. And all the traditional practices that might have set us apart are now being employed by all kinds of Christians, because those are the only things that we can use and that work in this time. And so our commitment to the ancient traditional practices aren't for us to exist in the past, but that grounding prepares us for the future, come what may. And so that's been a powerful thing for me as well. And the other thing I will say is, I have of late have found some energy in life of coming from change, because everything is really been a fruit basket turnover and starting over, and we've rearranged furniture, literally, in the reordering of the nave and sanctuary, but the entire campus, nothing's been untouched by reordering, and that is an opportunity to begin again. And when we come back, everything's going to be different, not because someone said, I feel like a change. Change has been thrust upon us, and now we have the opportunity to respond positively and faithfully to that. And that new beginning, which we all long for, is something that I'm now living into. So maybe as the sun's beating down on my Jonah-esque experience, I'm finding some enthusiasm behind that. But I'm grateful, as we all are, to all of you who are watching, to all of you who've joined us in prayer, to all of you who have done the best that we can. Virtual faith is not an incarnate faith, and that's been our tension, because the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we believe at the very fiber of our belief that God did not virtually save us, but came among us. And it's been very difficult for us to respond to Him in a virtual manner. But again, a time for us to learn, so that when we can come back safely, we'll be renewed in that. But thank you for almost a year, and it will be a year of faithful service and waiting and prayer. And we're absolutely grateful. So on this feast day of our patron of St. Timothy, who was in a time of great change, upheaval, and uncertainty, he remained steadfast. Thank you for doing the same. And thank you for praying for us, your staff, as we strive to do the same as well. And we look forward, and we hope with great anticipation, for when we can all come together and tell stories of what we all have learned together, as we tell those stories in person, connected the way that we're meant to be. So thank you so very much to all of you.